I'm B.A.Baxter, and I'm the author of the Heiwa book series. The story about Heiwa actually began when I was 8 years old, believe it or not. Um, I I don't really know what prompted it, but I decided I wanted to write a story that was just empowering. And I wrote a story about five girls who ended up in this magical land where they got the ability to fly. In the original story, though, they actually brought the ability to fly back home, and most of the story took place in like a suburban neighborhood. So it's obviously come a long way since then, but over the last 15 years since then, I have gotten a degree in like cultural sociology. So there's emphasis in criminology and social diversity. And I put a lot of that into the book as well. So also this last year, and as I often express, I'm an advocate for people with mental illnesses, particularly as the result of trauma. So because of this, I created the story to be more geared towards people who have like depression and anxiety, and there's even a character in there who's schizophrenic. And most of the time that I used to write my book was time that I was actually in the hospital going through the diagnosis process for severe post-traumatic stress disorder and some of the associated symptoms. So it's no wonder that the book actually starts in a hospital. um, Actually, people ask me that a lot, but about one of the most random characters that I didn't even expect it to be about. So there's a character at the beginning called Cassandra, and she is just the coworker that's terrible. She was literally written based on the horror stories I was told by my friends who have worked in retail, and she's just basically supposed to be relatable to everybody. It's that coworker that doesn't like anybody but still always gets her way. Um, some of the characters actually do have a lot deeper um, meaning to them. For example, the character Thomas is based on the person that this book is actually dedicated to. Not 100%, just some of the things that he says and some of the things about him. My friend is actually a therapist, and obviously Thomas is not. Then Tasia actually has a very deep meaning to me because she's one of the original characters in the story. She was there even in the story I wrote when I was 8. And she was based on, actually, my uncle was going to adopt this girl from Russia who was my age, and I had basically planned out our future to be like best friends, and then she didn't end up being eligible for adoption. So that was really heartbreaking to me, and so I envisioned this character who was adopted into a wealthy American family, and just basically created this life that I wanted for my cousin. Interestingly enough, over the years, that character has come to be more identified with me and my actual like desires and characteristics. Ava is another one that's kind of interesting. That one was also an original character, but her dialogue was actually all written during times when I was like coming down from episodes of post traumatic stress disorder. So you'll find that a lot of the things she says are very like irrational, and she's a little bit aggressive, or a lot aggressive, but she's not necessarily like a bad person. She's just irrational. So, and it's funny because it really helped me to come down from these episodes to write her dialogue, because writing out these words that I knew were irrational, as somebody else's voice in a way that wasn't going to hurt anybody. You know, I wasn't yelling at anybody, I was just writing another character who was yelling at people. So yeah, her background is kind of interesting as well. And then the last one I kind of want to talk about is Peter, and his character, obviously, is based on historical data that isn't very well kept. So I did a lot of research to be able to create Peter. His character is essentially supposed to be the perfect best friend, the only person that could have possibly got into Ava and convinced her to manifest her guardian, essentially. So his dialogue is actually written in the same format that a very famous book, Their Eyes Were Watching God, is written in, because it's based in the same time period, and I wanted it to be as accurate as possible because I didn't want to be irresponsible about the way I brought that character into the story. So, what I would want most for people to take away from this book, or the series as a whole, is that mental illness is only as limiting as we allow it to be. That a lot of the pushback against people with mental illness is based on societal factors and not actual characteristics of that person. So that's why I had one of the most powerful characters in the book is schizophrenic, um, and then kind of all of them have their own things that they worry about that are closely related to various mental illnesses. And I just wanted that to be the takeaway that even if you have major depression, anxiety, PTSD, schizophrenia, you can still do great things. There's still something out there. And I just wanted it, overall, I just wanted it to be able to be a story that's a break from the real world that people can relate to because it talks about these people coming from the real world, but it takes them into a place that's somewhere else for them to take a break, take a breath from reality. And I just really want people to realize, even these marginalized social groups that most of the main characters come from are like, I wanted them to understand their experiences and see them as someone the same as them, which is the reason that I think I took a risk and didn't describe Ava physically until well into describing her backstory because I wanted people to relate to her and be like putting themselves in her shoes without seeing her as someone different from them. Okay, like I said, I'm B.A. Baxter. I wrote the Heiwa series. You can follow the Heiwa book series on Facebook and Instagram using the @ Heiwa and Kadoku. You can also follow me on YouTube for updates about the coming books on the YouTube channel Brax, Brax. Thank you for watching.